mindfulness?
Okay, so I have been a yoga instructor. I had been a yoga instructor for about 8 years in a lot of the local health studios here in Frisco and Plano. Currently, I just lead efforts like this to help bring awareness and support in plant-based living. I'm also certified in plant-based nutrition. And having said that, I'm going to just help us move forward and hand it over to Meeta. And then we'll get started. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Anita. As Anita mentioned, I help Anita run our Green and Fit Frisco group, and I'm a National Board Certified Health Coach as well as American Lifestyle Medicine Certified Coach. My background is in nutrition and behavioral sciences, and I'm so glad to see all of you took the time to join us today. Without any further delay, I'll hand over to Dr. Bandana to tell us something about her practice and share some information with us.
Good morning. Thank you guys for joining us. I'm Dr. Bandana Chawla. I'm the speaker's wife. And we have a clinic together in Houston, Texas. It's a primary care clinic. I'm board certified in internal medicine, and also we are both board certified in lifestyle medicine, and we're both very passionate about helping people move forward with healthy lifestyle, which includes nutrition, mindfulness, stress management, exercise, sleep, healthy relationships, avoidance of tobacco, limiting alcohol, all the stuff that we know we should be doing, but bringing it into our lives is often a challenge. So thank you so much for joining us, and I'm going to hand it over to Dr. M.
Yeah, hi. First of all, I want to thank Anita and Meeta from Green and Fit Frisco for organizing this event. And, you know, a lot of you already know me, and you know the two things I like to talk about are healthy nutrition and mindfulness. So it's really an honor and an opportunity to share this with you today. And I think before we get started, Anita has some housekeeping rules, and then we'll share the screen, and I'll start with the presentation. First, we'll talk about the neuroscience a little bit, and then we'll do a practical aspect where we do a guided meditation all together. Thank you.
Thank you, Munish. So just a reminder, a couple of things. If everybody could stay on mute, we will have a Q&A session at the end, so we'll be okay to unmute at that point of time. And the second thing is that we will be recording the session in order to be able to share it with folks that couldn't make it. And if you have any, there is a chat window. So I think most of us are a little new to this app. So you should have icons at the bottom of your screen that show you certain things you could do. There are ways to, like in your chat window, you could continue, even though we're staying on mute, please feel free to put in your comments or questions if you'd like in the chat window. Up until we start the Q&A session, we'll try and answer them. But there are reactions, you know, you could chat in the thing, and then there's a mute and unmute that happens next to your name. So if you're having any trouble, even like technical difficulties trying to figure something out, please feel free to use the chat window during the conference. Having said that, I'll hand it back over to you, Munish. Thank you.
Okay, so should I have access yet? The sharing of the screen?
Meeta should be doing that right now.
Do you have it, Dr. Chawla?
Okay, it wants me to. Okay, I don't see it yet, Meeta.
Okay, let me check again.
We did do this yesterday, so.
Yeah. It says, okay, let me try it again. It wouldn't let me.
Hi, can you guys hear me okay?
Okay.
Okay.
We definitely have some issue there.
Are you able to see my screen or not yet?
We cannot.
It says his camera is off.
Yeah, we see you now, but I don't, it shows to me that you are the presenter and it won't let me do anything beyond that.
Okay. Can you guys see my screen or no?
No.
I think they said that maybe you can email it to Meeta and then she can share it.
Yeah, I could do that.
I can go out and come back in if that would help.
Okay.
Yeah, we can try that as well.
Okay, we can try that.
Thank you for your patience, everyone.
You know, Dr. Chawla, I made you the co-host.
Oh, did he leave already?
He did. Sorry about that.
The co-hosting should work.
Right.
Okay, I am back in. I don't know if you guys... Oh, hopefully you can hear me and see me.
I can.
Okay, I'm getting a thumbs up. All right.
What I'm going to do is make you the co-host. That way you will
Okay.
have the ability to. Yes.
Divya Chawla.
It's a shame that you
Okay, I can share now. Okay, hopefully you all can see my PowerPoint. Okay, all right. So glad you guys are here. So we're going to talk about mindfulness meditation. And the first thing I'm going to do is just define mindfulness. And then the second thing we're going to do is go into the neuroscience. And then I'll share some studies. And the fourth thing, we'll do a guided practice. So what is mindfulness? So I like to break it up into 3 parts or 3 steps. So the first part is just being present, just being here with your body and your mind in the present moment. Okay? And after you're here in the present moment, the next step is just to be aware. Aware of any thoughts, aware of any sensations in the body. If you have knee pain at this point, you just acknowledge that you have knee pain. You're accepting of whatever the awareness brings to you. We're non-judgmental with whatever the present moment brings with it. We're not resisting it. We're not trying to push it away. We want to cultivate that attitude of acceptance. And the reason to do all this is so we can have a skillful response to any situation, whether it's a bodily sensation, an interaction with a family member, or anything life throws our way. So typically, we have a stimulus and we have our usual habitual reaction. Teenager son comes in, he's got the music too loud. Your first reaction would be to tell him to turn down the music. But if you're just present and seeing what's going on, maybe you can have a more skillful response and engage the person in some conversation before just telling him to turn the music down. Okay. This is sometimes, folks, when they're first starting any sort of meditation practice, whether mindfulness meditation or anything else, they always want to know what's in it for me. So there's so much research that has been done in this field that it's really easy to answer this question. So one of the things it can do is allows you to be more focused, even better memory and attention span. And you can see how this can be so valuable in your studies, in your academics, and even your job. Another thing people frequently use meditation for is reducing their stress. In our modern day lives, we're just constantly inundated with stress. So to have better physical and emotional health, just general well-being and reducing our stress, this is a powerful tool that we can use. Another thing that I really encourage people to use it for is for personal improvement. When we're all trying to do something a little bit better today than we did yesterday, when we're trying to change ourselves, foster a good habit, it is really helpful if you can be mindful during the transition. And perhaps the most important reason, and this is actually the reason meditation was first introduced into this world about 2,500, maybe 3,000 years ago, is to learn to lead a more aware, compassionate, and spiritually connected life. So at any point, if there's any questions, especially when we get to the technical part of this, please put your questions in the chat, and the hosts are going to let me know, because I want you to be able to follow along, what I'm talking about. If something's not clear, please let me know. So we'll kind of switch to the neuroscience part now. So from the neuroscientific perspective, mindfulness meditation is a technique that can literally transform the mind. You can make new connections in your brain, and there's actual research which shows there's actual structural changes that happen in the brain. And with these changes, they lead to positive changes in our physical health, emotional health, and spiritual health. And really, ultimately, there's more joy, peace of mind, and even helps us increase our empathy and compassion. And the underpinnings, or what makes all of these changes possible, is the brain's ability to change itself. And the fancy term for that is neuroplasticity. So at one time, it was thought that the brain, the wiring, connections of the different neurons, how the brain is wired, how one neuron connects to several billion other neurons, this wiring was pretty much set at around age 10 or 11. We had a static view of neuroscience about the brain. But the research over the last 20, 30 years has really, brought this to the forefront that our brain is changing all the time. At one view, we had a static view of our Earth, that it's basically a static thing and nothing is changing, and now we know that's not true. The same thing about our brain. Our brain is changing every day. So there's over 80 billion neurons, and the way they connect with each other, the way the pattern changes, it's changing anyway. This is what I tell my patients. With meditation, especially mindfulness meditation, you're making that change intentional. If you want some more blue color in your life, you're making that change intentionally. So that's the power of meditation. This is how we can literally transform ourselves into something better. So let's kind of briefly go over some of the tools that are available to modern science and how we know all this. And there are a bunch more tools than what I'm mentioning here, but just for the sake of time, we're going to just talk about 3: MRI, functional MRI, and SPECT imaging. So MRI is a machine that can image inside of us. So if you do an MRI of the abdomen, you can see the liver, the kidney, and the intestines. If you do an MRI of the brain, you can see the internal structures. You can see the different lobes. You can see the brain stem in quite exquisite detail. Functional MRI is able to not only give you structural information, you not only see the anatomy, not only see the structures, you can actually see what part of the brain is activated when we do different things. So when I'm moving my hand, different part of the brain is going to be activated. When I'm talking, different part of the brain is going to be activated. So all these things, even a thought, activates different parts of the brain. So functional MRI shows you the actual structure and what structures are active right now. SPECT imaging is another imaging tool, and this gives us very crude, very rudimentary structural information, but gives us a lot of functional information. So functional MRI is kind of, sort of the best of both worlds. And I'll show you examples of all of these as the presentation goes on. So when we have these wonderful tools, we can generate these beautiful detailed diagrams which show us the anatomy of the brain. And this is a schematic, but there are actual sagittal sections that have been done on cadavers that you can see these structures, and the MRI can show these structures, in a living person. So don't worry, this is not going to be a neuroscience class. We're just going to go over a few structures. I want you to pay attention here in the front. This is the blue part here. This is the prefrontal cortex, and this is in the frontal lobe. So this is in the front part of our brain. Okay, on the top here, it's going to be our parietal lobe. This is important in movement, in sensing our environment. In the back here is going to be the occipital lobe. The main function of that is vision. And on the sides, which you can't really appreciate on this section because it's cut in such a way that we're just seeing the front and the back, but on the side are the temporal lobes, which are responsible for language and hearing. So just to kind of get you oriented. So the blue part is going to be the front of our brain, and this is located in the frontal lobe. And the 3 other structures I want everyone to kind of pay attention to, the other one is this called insula, and this is a triangular structure located here. The next one is this almond-shaped structure that's called the amygdala. And the last one, this sort of weird-shaped structure with a long tail, and that's the hippocampus. Okay, we're going to look at all of these in more detail. Okay, so prefrontal cortex first. This is in the frontal lobe, as I mentioned, and this is responsible for executive function. This is the CEO of the brain. This is going to set goals, what we want to do, and it also formulates plans on how to accomplish that goal. In addition to that, it's important in managing our emotions. It does this by guiding and inhibiting the limbic system. So limbic system are numerous areas in the brain which regulate our emotion. And the combination of the prefrontal cortex and the limbic system ultimately allows us to experience emotions. So limbic system consists of numerous areas, but we're just going to focus on the insula, the amygdala, and the hippocampus. So let's look at those in a bit more detail. So the hippocampus, as I mentioned, is this sort of bluish-green structure here with a long tail. And this is important when you're trying to learn a new skill. It's a place where you form new memories, and it's also the storage for all the memories that we create. The amygdala, which is the almond-shaped structure, this pink structure right here, this is, you can think of it as an alarm bell. It activates our fight and flight response. Its job is to constantly look out threats and has a really important role in managing our anxiety and stress. So these together with the insula and many other structures make up the limbic system. We're not going to get too much into detail. I just want to give you a flavor of the major characters that are involved. So this is a cross-section of the brain. So in this section, let me just quickly go over. Frontal lobe would be here. On the side is going to be the temporal lobe, and on sort of a little bit on top would be the parietal lobe. We have dual structures, one on either side, and on the back here would be the occipital lobe. So this is the triangular-shaped structure that I showed you previously. So this is located in the lateral sulcus, and the reason that's important, so it's located near the junction of the frontal lobe, parietal lobe, and temporal lobe. So just because where it's located, it's in touch with several parts of the brain. So it's communicating with, has numerous connections. It's important in physiologic self-awareness, awareness, just simple body sensations, heat, cold, itching. Not only that, it generates a subjective feeling. When you're feeling good, you may have a sense of peace or joy. When you may be a little anxious or sad, the insula and its combination with the prefrontal cortex gives you this physiologic or subjective feeling. It's also helpful in maintaining attention and also plays a role in empathy, compassion, and managing of negative emotions. So just a small triangular area does a lot of these different things. Okay, so before I get to the actual studies and research, I just want to take a moment here to see if anyone has any questions, if there's anything in the chat box. I just want to make sure everybody kind of has the foundation before we go a little further.
This is great, Dr. Chawla. Thank you so much. We did get a question about being able to share the PowerPoint itself with attendees.
So far, so good?
Dr. Chawla, can you hear me?
Dr. Chawla?
Hi, Anita. I lost you for a second. Was there a question?
Yeah.
Yes. We got a question about whether it would be okay to share the actual PowerPoint slide deck with the attendees. Would that be okay?
Dr. Chawla, can you hear us?
We can come back to that.
Harvard did a study for about 8 weeks.
नहीं मैंने कहा आपने रख दिए
हाँ वो बीच में बंद हो गया मैं क्या बताने जा रही थी उनका बंद हो गया
Sorry, folks. I think we're having some technical difficulties. Bandana, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear
Okay.
you. I just
Okay.
went over there to tell him to go in and come back, go out and come back in, because I was just seeing a black screen after he asked. Oh, there he is.
Okay.
All right. How much do I need to go back?
We don't really know because we don't know when we lost you.
I can tell you. So you were done telling about the structures, and now you were actually going to get into the evidence for neuroplasticity, and you had stopped to ask if there were any questions. After that, you were out.
Okay. All right. So actually, it wasn't gone for too long. Okay. Perfect. All right.
Okay.
I'm going to share my screen again.
Sue says it was before the Harvard study slide. It's probably
Perfect.
started. And while I have you, we did have a question or a request for if the deck itself can be shared with attendees. Would that be okay?
Absolutely.
Thanks.
We do have one more question.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Are you referring to experience-dependent plasticity? And if so, does meditation lead to plasticity? New connections that are associated with certain structural and functional changes in the brain?
Okay, I'm just going to make sure that I heard the question correctly, that can meditation cause actual structural changes in the brain, and is that what I'm referring to as neuroplasticity? So yes, there's actual structural changes that occur that you can see on the MRI, and there's functional changes. And by that I mean we can form new connections. So the actual neurons, they don't grow in number, but they form new and more extensive connections, or they form new connections. And our brain's ability to do that at any age is sort of formally defined as neuroplasticity. Does that help?
Yes, that was our question.
Okay. Can you guys see the screen again? Okay. I think this is where I lost you all. Can you guys see Harvard unveils MRI study proving meditation literally rebuilds the brain's gray matter in 8 weeks? Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. All right. So I'm going to be, pointing to those structures in the limbic system, the insula, the amygdala, and the hippocampus again. But I just kind of wanted to show you where they're located in the brain and what structures are involved. And this talk is, I'm not an expert on neuroscience, but I've kind of made it relatively simple so we get the general concept. But all these structures are interacting with numerous other structures. But these have been the areas that have been studied most extensively, so it's easy to talk about. So let's talk about this Harvard study. So they did this study for 8 weeks, and they did the MRI. Let's see. There we go. Okay, so they did the study for 8 weeks, and the practice they used was mindfulness meditation, total of 16 participants, and they practiced for about 30 minutes a day. So it wasn't extensive training. Even after 8 weeks, when they did the MRI before the meditation training and after the meditation training, they actually saw increased gray matter density, neuronal density in the hippocampus. And they saw decreased gray matter density or decreased neuronal activation in the amygdala. And in this particular study, they did not see any change in the insula. And there's numerous other studies I could show you, but in lieu of that, I'm going to share a meta-analysis study. For those of you who may not be familiar with meta-analysis, this is, you take multiple studies and you see which conclusion is common to multiple studies. So if some conclusion is only seen in some of the studies, you don't include that as the overall conclusion of the meta-analysis. But if some conclusions are present in numerous studies, then that's what you can learn from the meta-analysis. So I'm just going to kind of go over what this meta-analysis showed. It showed that because of neuroplasticity, there are structural and functional changes that happen in the brain with mindfulness meditation, and that these changes occur in the frontal lobe, parietal lobe, and temporal lobes. And specifically, they found that there is increased neuronal density in the prefrontal cortex, as well as the hippocampus and the insula, and there's decreased neuronal density in the amygdala. Okay, I mean, all that sounds great, but what does that really mean? So let's look at it one at a time. So when you have decreased neuronal density in the amygdala, it means we're not in a state of alarm or fear all the time, which further means that we have less production of our stress hormones. And you can see how this can decrease our anxiety, decrease our fears, and insomnia. And research, and this is really new research, is shown with decreased neuronal density in the amygdala, they've also shown decrease in aggression in prison inmates. And the other thing that we learned from the Harvard study and the meta-analysis study, that there is increased activation of the prefrontal cortex, the hippocampus, and the insula. And it's not that it's any one of these things, it's a combination of these things being activated together more than anything. And what they found was with these three structures being activated together, this basically lifts our mood, gives us a sense of joy, increases our attention, brings feeling of peace and harmony. And physiologically, they measured the cortisol of these participants in their blood, and they noticed that the cortisol production had decreased after they did meditation on a regular basis. So it's fairly easy to see, I think, that how all of this can help physical conditions or medical conditions such as high blood pressure, heart disease, chronic pain, and psychological conditions such as, anxiety, fear, insomnia. And the really interesting thing that they noticed in all of these studies that improved our attention, our empathy, our connection, and just compassion to our community, other individuals. So I want to show you an image of a functional MRI. So this is again a sagittal image. On the front here we have the frontal lobe, and on the back here we have the occipital lobe. And if you guys remember that triangular structure I pointed out before, that's going to be our insula. And in this study, they found when the meditators, and these were experienced folks who had been doing it for a while, that this is their image on the left here at baseline. There's no activity in the insula. And when they're actively meditating, the insula is very active. Another thing this study showed that when we practice these techniques, we can also activate the same brain structures. But if you're not an experienced meditator, the amount of activation that you get in the insula, it's going to be less than those who are, regular meditators. So we can get the same results if we continue to progress and, take this seriously. This is a SPECT image, and you can see it sort of gives very crude information on the anatomy, on the structure of the brain, but it's really helpful in telling us which parts of the brain are activated. So in this study, these were not experienced meditators, the folks that had just had training for 6 weeks or 8 weeks. And you can see this is the participants at baseline, and this is when they're meditating. And I want you to focus your attention on the frontal lobes, the prefrontal cortex area. You can see that there's much more activity in these parts as compared to when they were not meditating. Just showing again that the prefrontal cortex really gets activated in all of us when we do meditation. So just a little bit about my personal journey. So I took a Vipassana course about 8 years ago, and this was a 10-day silent retreat. And the English word that would be most closely can be translated for Vipassana would be mindfulness meditation. The way it was defined, it's a meditation technique that directs attention inward to oneself in the present moment. So we're trying to be in our body, in our mind, in the present moment, and just be aware, but be non-judgmental. Non-judgmental being the key word. So focus is on one's own body in the present moment, and we can use different techniques. We can use our breath, we can use our bodily sensations. The practice that we'll do at the end of this talk will focus on the breath. And you know, it's wonderful to learn about meditation, learn about the neuroscience, but really you have to experience it to really appreciate, you know, what it entails. So we're going to do a practical session at the end. The other meditation that I learned during this 10-day retreat was Metta Bhavana, or loving kindness meditation. In this technique, the attention is not directed inwards, but outwards. It's done after Vipassana, after you yourself have achieved a balance of mind, some peace and harmony within. Naturally, the impulse is going to be to share that peace and harmony with other beings. So this literally, you send out thoughts of love, compassion, and well-being to all of creation. And the really wonderful part about this meditation is that it activates almost the same areas of the brain as mindfulness meditation. So with loving kindness meditation, our prefrontal cortex and our insula are activated. Remember, the combination of the two gives us a feeling of grounding, peace of mind, joy, increase in empathy and compassion. So whether you practice mindfulness meditation or loving kindness meditation, really the end result is the same. And so again, mindfulness meditation or loving kindness meditation, it's going to give us a feeling of joy, peace and harmony, reduce our stress, anxiety and phobias. So you can see that this is, you know, perfect recipe for better physical health, emotional health, and even spiritual health. And so I hope I have, I know a lot of you are meditators already, but those of you who may have been new to this practice, I hope I've convinced you that meditation is a worthwhile thing to get into. And so I put in this image just to tell folks that you don't need this perfect posture. You don't need to be in a lotus position, you know, spine perfectly straight. So there's no special posture that you need to do to get to do meditation. But there are a few rules. And one of the rules is we want to kind of ground our body. We want to get into the present moment. So before I start the practice, I just want to hear if there's any questions. Otherwise, we can deal with them at the end after the practice. Anything at all right now before we start the guided portion?
Yeah, Dr. N, this is Anne. I have a quick question.
Yes.
So you said while with the brain imaging stuff, when people are meditating, it changes the structures of their brain. But what about after they stop meditating?
Okay.
Is it just while they're meditating, or does that effect last longer?
That's a very good question. So this is, think of this exactly as you're training the muscle when you're lifting dumbbells in the gym. So while you're actually actively, you know, doing the dumbbells, the muscle gets bigger. And if you continue the practice, then that all the gains that you have made, you keep them. But the key is continuation of practice. So, you know, you do meditation, and this is one of the reasons I really, you know, everyone has their own favorites. I really like mindfulness meditation is the fact that you have a formal period and an informal period. So in a sense, we want to do these formal practices where we cultivate bringing mindfulness into our life. But the ultimate goal and what we want to do is be mindful throughout the day. And with that continued practice, the gains stay, the actual changes in the brain stay. It's not like, once you've stopped meditating, those go away. But it's like, once if you're doing like a weight training course, if you do it for a month really diligently, but then you don't do it for 6 months, you kind of lose all that gain. So same thing. Just like we're training the muscle, we can train the mind. And with mindfulness, the wonderful thing is you have sort of a formal practice, and then you can continue to reinforce that as you move through the day and reinforce that and continue to grow. Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Sure. Okay. So as I said, let's kind of do a little practical session. So there's no special posture. You don't need to sit on the floor. Wherever you're comfortable. If you're comfortable on the floor, you can sit on the floor. If you're sitting in the chair, that's perfectly fine. But there are a couple of rules. So one is we want to have our back relatively straight. So if you're sitting in the chair, just kind of move away from the back of the chair. So just kind of feeling your sitting bones, just see where your feet are. We want to be balanced, so we're not leaning too far forward or too far back. So we're cultivating balance within our body. Then the next job is to create balance within our mind. The next thing is it's good to, if you have glasses, you can take them off, or just lower your gaze or close your eyes. We're just trying to minimize things that are going on in the environment. We're trying to direct the attention inward. And just kind of take a moment to just check in with your feet, check in with your hands, and if there's a little tension in any part of the body, you can roll your shoulders up and slowly roll them back and settle in. So every first Saturday and third Saturday, I do guided meditation, and this is, ever since we opened our clinic, we've been doing this. And before we start the actual mindfulness meditation, we do some breathing exercises just to kind of further relax and ground ourselves. So the first part we're going to do is after everyone's kind of settled in, the body is still and in balance, we're going to take slow, deep breaths in and out. So take a slow, deep breath in and slowly breathe out. Slow, deep breath in and out. Slow, deep breath in and out. And one last time, another deep breath in and out. Okay, so we took intentional breaths, or we did a technique that regulated our breath. Now in mindfulness meditation, we're again going to use the breath, but we're going to just watch the breath. We're not going to try to regulate it. We just want to observe reality as it is. We're just observers. So when we're breathing in, we're going to be aware, and when we're breathing out, we're going to be aware. If you can kind of feel the breath as it comes in your nostrils, in the area above the upper lip, great. But even if you can't feel the breath, just be aware. You're like a guard at the gate. You're just noticing when the breath comes in, when the breath leaves. So all of us will be doing this, and we'll be doing really well for 2 breaths, maybe 3, maybe a few more. But at some point, your mind is going to wander, because this is the habit pattern of the mind. It happens for all of us. So when you notice that your mind has wandered, when you become aware, this is the part where non-judgment comes in, compassion comes in, acceptance comes in. that we are aware that our mind has wandered, but we don't get frustrated by it. We just accept the reality as it is. So we're going to practice for about 5 to 7 minutes. And in this time, you're watching your breath and the mind wanders and you bring it back. And this can happen 10 times, 15 times. Doesn't matter the number. All we're trying to do is cultivate this attitude of first attention, being in the present moment by using breath as the anchor. And then number 2, when we become aware that our mind has wandered, we want to practice self-acceptance, non-judgment, not being frustrated. So, and then the skillful response will be to just gently go back to the meditation. And after we do the mindfulness meditation part, I'm going to ask you to keep your eyes closed and we'll do a little bit of loving kindness meditation. And so again, if you want to just kind of check in with your body, just kind of settle in, and we're going to begin with breathing in. I know that I'm breathing in. Breathing out. I know that I'm breathing out. Just watch the breath as it comes in, as it leaves the body. And we're just going to be dispassionate observers, just watching the breath. That's going to be your anchor to keep us in the present moment. So let's practice. I'm going to be quiet for about 5 to 7 minutes. You may relax yourself, but keep your eyes closed and repeat in your mind, may I be happy, healthy, and peaceful. May all beings be happy, healthy, and peaceful. May I forgive all beings for any harm they may have caused me, knowingly and unknowingly. May all beings forgive me for any harm I may have caused, knowingly and unknowingly. May all be happy, may all be happy, may all be happy. Thank you for joining me. Okay. I'm happy to take any questions at this point. I'm just going to briefly go back to my presentation for just a moment while folks are getting settled to just share one more slide with you. And that's this next one. Let's see. So these days, it's really easy to start your mindfulness practice. There are so many wonderful apps that are out there. We ourselves have used Calm and Balance, and I know Headspace is really popular. There's a really wonderful app and program that Richard Davidson, and he has been working with the Dalai Lama to create these wonderful apps. He's from the University of Wisconsin. And it's really a program more than an app called Healthy Minds, and they've made it available to everyone for free. And actually, Balance right now is free for the next year. And as I mentioned previously, I myself do mindfulness meditation every first and third Saturdays of the month. And you can, just go to our website, go to the meditation event, and the link to join us is right there, and you can just, join the meeting, and you don't have to be our patient or be from Houston. You can join from anywhere. Okay, I just wanted to mention that, and let me stop the share. And join everyone. And I'm happy to answer any questions or any comments or anything at all at this point. And thank you all very much for joining us today.
Thank you, Dr. Chawla. We do have a couple of questions for you. The first one is, are there any books that you would recommend? Can you hear me?
So I'm going to just look at the chat, and one of the questions was, what books do you recommend to learn more about this? Any book from Richard Davidson is very worthwhile. And the other author that I recommend highly is Jon Kabat-Zinn. So he's basically taken, he himself is a Buddhist scholar, but he's taken everything from Buddhism in a sense and sort of made it secular, that it's available for folks from any tradition, any religion. So it's just mindfulness in its bare brilliance, if that's the right word. And his name is Jon Kabat-Zinn, Z-I-N-N. And he has several books on the topic. So any one of those authors, pick up any book that you would like. That would be wonderful to do so.
Dr. Chawla, we do have one more question on what
Yes.
apps are free apps that you would recommend.
Apps, yeah. So the 3 apps that are really good and popular are Calm and Headspace, and they have a free version. And there's a 3rd app that came out recently. It's called Balance. And Balance, they've made it available for 1 year free for everyone. And Headspace is actually free for a year for all healthcare professionals. And the Healthy Minds, which is more than just a app, it's really a program for healthy mind. It's available free, and that's the work of Dr. Richard Davidson, the guy I mentioned. I'm seeing another question that I find myself drifting in and out of consciousness like falling asleep when I try to meditate. Is that expected? So this is it's a wonderful question. So whatever the present moment, whatever the experience that you have while you're meditating is the right experience, okay? Having said that, and I'm going to come back to that, but we want to make sure that we're relaxed, but not that we're kind of getting drowsy. So don't do it maybe at the end of the day. If that becomes a problem, maybe do it earlier in the day. So you take all these precautions where you set up the practice that it's going to be the most useful for you. When you're attentive and alert, we want to be relaxed, but not too relaxed that we get drowsy. And if drowsiness is not a concern, and we've done everything that we can to make the practice optimal, then when you're sitting down and meditating, whatever the present moment brings with it, that's what reality is. That's our job to cultivate acceptance with whatever is. So if the experience right now that you're going in and out of consciousness, then that's the experience. We're not judgmental about it. We're accepting whatever the present moment brings with it.
That is wonderful.
Okay, I'm just going to kind of scroll in the chat if there's anything else I missed. And Meeta, you can let me know if there's other questions that I don't see.
We did have somebody wanted to know about lifestyle docs practice as well.
Okay, sure. So Lifestyle Docs is a practice that my wife and I co-created last year. It's internal medicine because my wife is board certified in internal medicine, and it's a lifestyle practice also. So both of us are also certified, board certified in lifestyle medicine. And if you come into our clinic, one of the posters you'll see, it'll say, eat right, be fit, stress less, and connect more. So these are our 4 guiding principles. This is what we do ourselves in our life or try to do as faithfully as possible. And this is what we have our patients do. And really, it makes sense at a gut level that all these things are helpful. They'll get us better physical health, emotional health. But the other thing I like to point out is there's so much science which shows that if you get these 4 things right, you're going to have all the, good physical health, emotional health, blood pressure reduction, all the wonderful things, better emotional connection, all these things we really want in our life. There's actual research backing this up that it does work. And that's what we kind of educate our patients into bringing these qualities or these facets into their life.
Dr. Chawla, one of the authors that you mentioned was Dr.
Richard Davidson.
Richard Davidson.
Yeah, I'll type it in the chat.
Thank you.
And somebody else I noticed already typed in John Kabat-Zinn.
Mm-hmm.
And our website, someone's asking, it's called Lifestyle Docs. So if you just put in Lifestyle Docs in Google, you'll find it. Or just put in lifestyle, it's just one word, Lifestyle Docs, DOCS.com. And you can go directly to the website. then go to the events, and the very first event you'll see is meditation. And on the meditation, you'll see the link to join us for the meditation, the guided meditation that we do every first Saturday and third Saturday. I want to thank you all of you for your patience. We had a little bit of technical glitches in the middle, but thank you very much for sticking with it. And I have my wonderful wife, my co-partner in Lifestyle Docs, joining me. So we just want to wish you a wonderful weekend, and thank you all very much.
Thank you, Dr. Chawla. This was so good. I am feeling much relaxed after the meditation with all the technical glitches that we had. But it definitely.
Thank you both for arranging it. It was a really nicely organized event, and we look forward to attending more of your events in the future.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Chawla. And thank you, everybody, for joining us. We will follow up as requested with the PowerPoint that will have some more information. It'll have this website, so just in case you haven't caught some of it, you will be able to do that. And of course, you know how to get a hold of us. So if you have any questions, please just reach out. Outside of that, we also wanted to mention that we at Glean and Fit Frisco also plan to start a guided meditation bi-weekly. We will be setting the time and date. We want to make sure we don't overlap with some of what's already available and what Dr. Chawla mentioned. So we'll make sure that that happens, but we will be sending out information where we'll probably meet once in 2 weeks just for about 10 minutes in a guided meditation, again with the hope that it helps some of us do this on a more regular basis on our own. Because once in 2 weeks is probably a little bit disconnected, but we thought that might be a good way to get started, and again help us maybe try and do this on our, insert it somewhere in our day. Thank you again, everybody, and we will share the recording, we will share the PowerPoint and a lot of the resources that were shared today, and a huge thank you to Dr. Chawla for this. Look forward to seeing all of you on our monthly event. And again, thank you for the patience with the tech trouble.
It was wonderful. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
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 Really? Almost. Why are you guys so impatient?
തോണയോ
ഇതോണായിട്ടില്ലേതാണ്
ഇതല്ല ഞാൻ തോന്നിയതാ
Amma, you're not on mute.
എല്ലാരും പോയില്ലേ?
Okay.
Not yet.
Oh.
Mita, that's my mother on the call.
Hello, Auntie. I think, is that Bhavin from Anaheim? I don't know who that person is.
Yeah.
Okay, let's
So
connect.
we'll figure out how to share the recording, and then we'll take it from there.
Okay.